Welcome to the 22nd episode of the Influential Wellnesspreneur podcast. My name is Sebastian Hilbert and I'm the Wellnesspreneur expert. I help wellness business owners to reach their ideal clients with an effective online presence. And as I always say, on this journey, I come across some incredible people which I interview every single week to share with you their stories and their advice so you can grow your wellness business. This week, I have Katrina Fox, journalist, media coach, and author on the podcast, and it's a great pleasure to have you here. Katrina, let's see if she is here. How are you?
Hi, Sebastian. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to have you here, and everyone who doesn't know her yet, let me quickly tell you a little bit about Katrina. She's an award-winning journalist, PR consultant, founder of Vegan Business Media, host of Vegan Business Talk podcast, and author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. The first global book providing success strategies for inspiring and existing vegan business owners. So as you can see, she's very specific on what she does. And that's also one of the reasons why I really wanted to be on the podcast, because yes, it's about veganism, but it's really, if you dig deeper on their website and learn more about you, it's really about growing an ethical business and ethical and sustainable. And that's what really got me. And I find this was absolutely amazing. Katrina has written extensively for niche and mainstream media for 17 years on animal advocacy and ethical businesses, and is regular Forbes contributor specializing in writing about vegan and plant-based businesses. Katrina teaches vegan business owners how to do their own PR and get free media coverage through her signature online course and group coaching program, Vegans in the Limelight. She loves glitter, bling, and disco, and I know she does. She really does. Last time I met her, this was the first thing I recognized. Do you remember that? When I said, like, you clearly love glitter.
Yes.
I know it's...
You came up. I was wearing my bling.
Absolutely perfect. It's actually when I met Katrina to Claire Mans, who was also on the podcast, I think episode 11 or 12. She's the vegan psychologist, and she just launched a new book. And Katrina did a great job in moderating the event in Sydney. So that's when we met, and I was so looking forward after that meeting to the podcast interview today. So let's get right into it, Katrina. I want to know, how did it all happen? Like, how did it get from you to this need? I mean, it's very special, and what kind of got you to make this decision?
Yeah, so I'll go through it fairly succinctly, but I went vegetarian when I was 11. I'm from the UK originally, and I did that because I didn't want to eat the animals who I loved, and that's relevant because of the niche that I'm in today. It took me another 20 years to actually become vegan, because a lot of what we know about animals and animal agriculture, exploitation of animals, is very much covered up. So it took me longer to find out around dairy and other things, but I went vegan 21 years ago. So I've been vegan way before it got really cool and trendy. I started out performing. I thought I wanted to be an actor and do performance art. So I did that for a little while. And then about 17, 18 years ago, I got into journalism, and I sort of fell quite nicely into it because it merged my passions of wanting to make a difference to change the world and writing, which I'd always enjoyed. So I've written for, as you mentioned in your bio, for a lot of either niche, specialist, and also mainstream media like the Sydney Morning Herald, the ABC. I've written on a range of topics around social justice, from feminism to LGBTIQ issues, animal rights, and ethical business. And
LGBT, what issues?
Oh, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, intersex, queer, LGBTI.
Oh, no, it's difficult.
Yeah,
right.
So I've worked for the gay press for some time, about a decade ago. I've worked quite extensively there. So I've always sort of been involved in social change of some kind. And so I enjoyed a journalism career, and then journalism started to change. So about 2012, I had a bit of a life change, and I thought I wanted to do something different. I did a lot of self-help, personal development courses and training. Thought at one stage I wanted to be a life coach. So, I'd kind of gone down that side of things, and I started hanging out with entrepreneurs, and I found that they were asking, I was looking for ways to translate my skills, my journalism and writing skills, into some kind of different kind of business. And I found some of the entrepreneurs were asking me, oh, how do you get into the media? And it's funny when you, and I think some of your audience might relate to this, when you are so into something and you just know something so well that you kind of take it for granted, you kind of think everyone must know. So I thought, well, no one's going to want to know, how to put a press release together, how to pitch journalists, how to do this, that, and the other. They'll all know, surely everybody knows that. But of course, I found out very quickly they didn't. And some of them were, and of course I knew that anyway, because I get pitched, even nowadays, even though I'm not working full time as a journalist, I still get pitched. And a lot of pitches are so awful and horrible, even from PR agencies, which I find really shocking. But anyway, I kind of figured out, oh, okay, I could help people with this. But what I found was, although people were, wanted my help and they were willing to pay for it, I actually wasn't motivated to help just any entrepreneur. And I had a bit of coaching session with a friend of mine, Melissa, and she said to me, look, who would you really want to work with? Even if they weren't paying you, who would you ideally want to work with? And I said immediately, vegan entrepreneurs. And this was about 2012. This was a bit before veganism kind of got very cool and trendy. And she said, look, that might be a little bit too niche. Why don't you broaden it to more kind of just ethical entrepreneurs kind of thing? So I tried that for a while. And if you look at my Katrina Fox website, that's still kind of, it has that broader context to it, if you like. But it just wasn't really quite working. It wasn't enough. I needed to really drill down. And so I decided to just go for it and created vegan business media, not plant-based, but vegan business media. And just really kind of go for it and identify, these are my tribe, these are my people I want to work with. Yes, they may be much smaller amount of people, but they are the ones that I really, really want to help. And it's actually worked out very well. So that's what I've done. And it took a little while actually, though, to even label myself as a PR consultant or a PR expert, because in journalism, when people leave journalism and go into PR, it's seen as going over to the dark side. So there was always kind of something a bit negative I felt about PR. So I was always a bit wary, and it took me quite a while, actually, probably took me a good couple of years to even change my LinkedIn profile to actually even mention the word PR. Whereas now I'm quite happy with it. If you go to my LinkedIn, it says straight away, vegan PR expert. So it's taken a while to get comfortable with that. And because I've also found out a lot of journalists do both now because they have to. So they might be working as journalists, but also PR.
Right, I totally understand it. But what's the exact difference? Like, what's the problem there? Is it because journalism is supposed to be like neutral and then showing what's new, and PR is like putting something out there with an agenda kind of thing? Or
pretty much. I mean, that's a fairly basic distinction. I mean, journalism is about reporting on issues, on topics, whereas if you're in PR, then yes, you're wanting to promote something. So if someone hires a publicist or a PR firm, or if they're doing their own PR, then obviously the win for you want an outcome to promote your brand, whether that's being quoted as an expert. But you cannot approach a journalist with that in mind. If you approach a journalist in mind saying, hey, can I have some publicity? Or, it's very obvious that you're just trying to promote your product. They're not interested because it's not their job while they're working as a journalist. So that's what the difference is. So I'd been used to working for publications, print and online media, and, writing stories, figuring out what stories are my audience going to like. And that's the premise of journalism, is what does my audience want? What are they going to like? What's going to interest them, and finding those angles. And so when a brand can do that, if they're doing their own PR, as long as they can find, pitch me a really good story, because I get pitched a lot for Forbes, even from vegan business owners, and I turn down far more than I actually write about, because it's got to be right for the audience. Just because someone's might have a brilliant vegan brand, unless there's a really good story there, I'm not going to write about them, because I'm not doing PR for them. I'm writing for Forbes, and I need to make sure that the stories are going to be of interest to the Forbes audience. So I think that's quite an important distinction, particularly for wellnesspreneurs who are wanting to get into the media, to get that free, which it is, editorial coverage, or earned media as we call it, versus paying for an ad. Then you've really got to come up with interesting stories and angles that are relevant for the outlets, for the specific outlets.
Absolutely. And I would say we, if it's okay, we get maybe to that a little bit later in the interview today, and what that story could be, and what there's maybe some helpful points there. But before we do, when you basically just said you went from a quite narrow niche. I mean, ethical business. That's already, I would almost say, it's a micro niche, to the even micro niche, like to even narrow it down further. Did you, what was the process like? Did you, I can imagine you run into some issues, revenue dropping, struggling to get business, or what happened there? So was there any hurdles you faced?
Not really, because I'd sort of moved from journalism, so I'd sort of had regular gigs with journalism that kind of paid the bills. So when I kind of moved into, you know, the shift, I mean, I was able to take some time out when I was doing the self-help courses and doing a lot of the retraining. Right. So I was sort of in a transition period anyway, and trying to figure out, right, who am I? And I actually created several websites. I think I have one called Mindset Makeover was one of them. I even started a company. I started a PTO because I thought, I'm going to be a life coach. I'm going to have this big life change. And I soon realized, actually, I didn't really want to do that. So I kind of had to close all that down. Then I started one up called Inspired Action Zone. So I kind of went through these incarnations, if you like. I think I had one called Sell Your Cause, which was, you know, doing training and for non-profits or, you know, campaign organizations. So I kind of kept trying these things out and putting things out there until I really recognized what I wanted to do. And once I nailed it down to, right, the vegan entrepreneurs, they're my real tribe. Now, that doesn't mean I don't work with anybody else, as long as their company and their products are not, you know, don't have any animal exploitation involved in them or contain any animal products. You know, I sometimes will consult with people who are in that broader ethical, sustainable area. But once I actually nailed it down to vegan business owners and entrepreneurs, and literally spent time just getting myself out there known as a vegan business expert, vegan PR expert, and all that takes time. But I found that that's really worked for me, because now people come to me and they say, oh, I've listened to your podcast, I've read your book, I've read your blog, I read your articles in Forbes, this is what I need help with. Can you help me? And either I'll say to them, yes, we can, you know, you can either book a call, or I've got an online program, or if I can't help them, if they need help in something specific, then I'll recommend them. I'll refer them on rather to, or recommend another professional. So it's actually worked. It's actually, yeah. And it might not work for everyone. My partner, Tracy, she's a clinical hypnotherapist and naturopath. She works with all kinds of people in her clinic, and she's happy to do that. I'm not, you know, because I'm helping someone to promote their brand or their business. So if you've got a product that's got honey in it, I'm not going to be a fit, because I can't in all good conscience, you know, promote someone who is promoting animal cruelty. So it's actually worked very well. And what I find as well, Sebastian, is that, and your audience might find this as well, is that because I've put that word in there, I've said, right, I'm vegan PR expert, my company's vegan business media. It's really, really obvious what I do is it actually weeds out anyone who's not going to be a fit, because some people will look at my LinkedIn, for example, or if they meet me and they find out what I do, think, oh, she's vegan, or I don't want to get involved with her. That's great. Some people might think, oh, you've lost a lead, but it's actually not. It means that they haven't had to waste their time contacting me saying, you know, oh, I have a restaurant and, you know, can you help me get PR? And then I find out, well, they're serving meat and I have to say to them, no, and here's why. It saves all of that. So I think it can actually be quite helpful in some instances to really narrow down and drill down. And because your tribe then attracts to you. So nowadays, I mean, I predominantly accept on LinkedIn. I turn down some people from LinkedIn. I don't just accept anybody's invitation to connect. I do basically want vegan entrepreneurs and authors and creatives to connect with me. Not predominantly, so I will connect with other people as well, particularly if they're on the periphery of sustainability or ethical. And I'm finding now that my tribe is, I'm getting far more requests to connect now from people who are in my circle, which is what you want. So I've actually found that by going really narrow, it's actually been better for me. But it has taken a while, and I think that's important for your audience to know as well, is it can take a while for you to get known in your particular area. I don't think there's any way of rushing it unless, you know, you've got what I call the Paris Hilton syndrome. Paris Hilton got famous very, very quickly, very, very fast, because she hired at least 5 PR agencies. If you've got a budget to do that, fine, good luck to you. Most of us haven't. So you've got to kind of put those hard yards in and consistently show up in front of your audience. A lot of people say to me, gosh, you're everywhere. I see you everywhere. Now, in reality, I'm probably not everywhere, but I am in a lot of places where my tribe are. So I'm emceeing events, you know, like Claire's. I actually did the PR for Claire's Man's book, Vistopia. So I emceed her talks. So I MC events. I show up to events where my tribe are going to be. I'm online on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'm in groups that are my tribe. So it seems like I'm everywhere within my tribe. And that then means, you know, when someone is looking for some PR help in my area, they'll generally think of me. And that's what you want to be doing as a wellnesspreneur, is to, because everybody's in it. It's such a big area, wellness, and everybody's getting into it now. So I think the more you can kind of narrow down and say, you're my target market, you are who I want to help, it can actually work for you rather than against you, even though it seems counterintuitive.
It does. It does sound counterintuitive, but I totally agree on you on all the things that you just mentioned, and that is one of the things we make sure we nail with every single one of our clients, because we heard it so many times, like you just did again, and we also experienced it for ourselves. Once you actually niche and narrow down, you actually start to expand, because you become known for something.
Yeah.
Before you're just like a jack of all trades, nobody knows you. And what happens then is, if you just like everybody else, or put yourself out there as everybody else, and you name yourself as like everybody else, what happens is you can just always be compared on price. Never really look at your value and what's really behind what you have to give. And that absolutely. Yeah, I love that you just said that. I totally agree. Very, very, very good. What's next for you, Katrina? Like you just said, you moved into this niche. It's going quite well. You're trying to get yourself out there everywhere. Is there anything bigger planned for the future, next 12 months?
Probably when I get more people onto my online PR course and group coaching program, because I do enjoy that. I do enjoy one-to-many as well as one-on-one consults. Sometimes I get a bit I tend to be a bit of an all or nothing sort of person. So I've been getting a bit carried away with quite a lot of my Forbes articles, because I really enjoy doing them. And sometimes I might kind of get into one thing and then I sort of neglect the other thing a bit. So sometimes I'm not communicating with my email list perhaps as often as I should be. So I think I probably need to, I'm probably wanting to, I think this year, focus a bit more on getting more people into that program, because we've had some really nice successes and it's something I enjoy doing. I emceed this year at the Naturally Good Expo. So I was hired to MC a room of talks. So potentially as well, interested in getting in front of bigger other audiences and helping them to get on board with the vegan side of things, particularly in the ethical and the sustainable sector, because I think they're quite good on people, they're quite good on environment, but I think a lot of that sector has a blind spot still when it comes to animals. And I think particularly, I think when I did a talk at the Naturally Expo as well, I talked about where to position ethical products. And I said, for me, ethical when it comes to animals is vegan. And some people find that controversial, but whatever, it is what it is. I believe that's absolutely the case. And so I really would love to see more of the ethical and the sustainability sector embrace veganism. So I would hope to get more paid speaking gigs and MC gigs along those lines. Definitely open to that. And at the moment, I'm collaborating with some other professionals within Australia to see what we can do to sort of raise the profile of vegan and plant-based businesses, because there's a lot happening in the US on that front, quite a bit happening in the UK, and I think it's time for that to happen in Australia. So I'm looking forward to collaborating with others and bringing along hopefully some cool initiatives.
Yeah, I can see like how that really gets you going there when it comes to sharing that message about veganism and trying to find more ways of putting it out there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really
I just definitely look, it's the way forward. There's just been a new report come out that's basically another report that's come out by Oxford University researchers to say that basically when it comes to the environment, the biggest single thing you can do is to go vegan. And I'm so glad that's come out now, because I think 2006, the UN's report came out, but this is very recent. So I think that I'm really glad that that's happened. So I'm looking forward to capitalizing on that and yes, getting it out there to embrace vegan, plant-based living.
Very good. That's awesome. That's really great. Yeah, and that's one of my my big passions as well, and that's why I like to also the podcast and try to educate and have people like you and there who share the same passion to do a little bit of that. But we also know there's other things. For instance, for therapists and wellness also in general, to get themselves out there. And one big thing is to use media, and I know that's your expertise. So we just talked at the beginning about stories. And you said, you have to have the right story that fits the audience that I'm writing to. So what I guess, what I understand is that depending on the journalist, there may be a different story needed. Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
How does that work?
It depends on the outlet. And so there used to be what we called a spray and pray approach. So a publicist or a PR firm would just send out a press release, just literally press a button, and it would go out to thousands of journalists. But often it would be, and then the PR person could say to the brand, oh, we've sent out your information to 10,000 media outlets. So it makes them look good, but only a tiny fraction of those would have been targeted. And so really they're kind of wasting your money when you're doing that. So what's happened over the past few years is that there's now much more a move to more targeted pitching. So we call it pitching. When you pitch a journalist a story, you need to have done a bit of research on that outlet. So if it's print or online, you need to have read some of the articles, find out what kind of stories that they tend to run. If it's a podcast or a radio show, then you listen to at least a couple of episodes. Same with TV. And then you're actually pitching what they want. And instead of just saying, hey, I represent so-and-so client, or if you're doing your own PR, saying, oh, I've got this great product, would you like to do a story on it? Journalists don't have time for that. They'll just press the delete button if they get emails like that. So you've just got to really target it. So for example, one of my students who's on my online PR course has just released what she believes is the world's first plant-based freeze-dried ice cream. So she put her pitch together on the learning platform, and then she got on the live monthly group call that I do. And she said, I want to pitch to this. It was a publication in the US, very much centered around clean eating, which is great. And she'd done a really nice pitch. She was pretty good, but I gave her some coaching and tweaking, because one thing she buried later down in her pitch was the fact that her products are organic. Now, because this was a clean eating publication, the fact that her products are organic is really important. So I said to her, move that up into your subject header. Because yes, the fact that it's vegan or plant-based is great. The fact that it's a world first is always going to be of interest. But the fact it's organic for a clean eating magazine is going to be really important. Whereas for a regular, say, vegan outlet, just the fact that it's vegan is of interest. The fact that it's organic might not be so as important. So it's all about and sometimes you can just tweak your pitches to bring certain things higher up, so that it's much more obvious to that journalist as to why it would be of interest. So it's really kind of one of the things that I teach on the course and in the consults, is that you do have to do a bit of research on the outlet. It's far better to target a smaller number of media outlets and do it properly. You're more likely to get better results from that than, like I say, just kind of sending the same old to a whole bunch of a higher number of media outlets and not getting a lot of results, because journalists are bombarded, like our email inboxes, even me, who I don't even, you can imagine if you work full time for a mainstream outlet, they're getting thousands of emails a week. And unless you grab them in those first few seconds with your subject header and a nice little pitch, they're just going to hit the delete button. I do it every day. As I say, I get pitched the most ridiculous things. It says very clearly on my Forbes blog, Katrina Fox writes about vegan and plant-based businesses. Do I get pitched about meat-based businesses? Do I get pitched about general business stuff that's of no interest? Yes, I do. And as soon as I can see it, I just hit the delete button. I don't have time to engage with those. So you've really not got a lot of time to grab the journalist's attention. You've got to make the journalist's job as easy as possible. And that's what I teach. So that's what I mean about getting the right story at the right time to the right media outlet. What I mean by the right time is you can often do something it's called newsjacking. So something that's already happening in the media, a news story, you can kind of riff off of that and find a particular angle. It could be something like a special day. So because your audience is wellnesspreneurs, so there's lots of special days like Dementia Awareness Day, perhaps, or Heart Day. I think there's a Heart Day coming up, IBS Day. You know what I mean? There's all these kind of health days that are all throughout the year. Those are really good opportunities for you to pitch around those days, because you can begin your pitch with you know, International IBS Day coming up, and then you lead into your pitch, or you can, you know, incorporate that into your pitch, and it gives the journalist a reason, like, why should we be covering this now, for example. And they're often looking for content around that. So times of the year, for example, Christmas. So maybe you might write something about, oh, Christmas is coming up, more people tend to get depressed at Christmas, you know, because their loved ones might have died. You know what I mean? If that's your speciality and you're a wellnesspreneur specialising in grief, for example, that could be something that you could pitch around those times. And journalists are always looking for something different as well. So instead of just regurgitating the same old around Valentine's Day or Christmas or these holidays, if you can come up with something a little bit different, a little bit quirky, something that even goes against the grain, against what, you know, the majority of your colleagues or the sector is saying, you know, because journalists like controversy. They do like controversy and conflict. It's fair to say that. So yeah, that's what I mean about coming up with the right story at the right time to the right outlet. Does that make sense? I know I speak very quickly, so
that's
hopefully that makes sense.
That's absolutely so. I guess for me to just kind of repeat it to also our audience to better understand it. So I got to look out for some key points or key topics, and maybe also writing styles, and that the media outlet I'd like to be featured in uses. And that's what I use in my pitch when I write to them. But then also have to write it at the right time. So as you just said, I could imagine you map out certain days that in the industry you are in, like wellness industry, we just had the natural, and what was it? The week of natural medicine or something like that. So, but when it comes to that, Katrina, let's say a week like that is coming up. When should I start writing to a journalist? Like a week before that happens, a month, 2 months?
Depends on the outlet. So for example, print media, so particularly the monthly print medias, like there's the monthly glossy health magazines, they can often have lead times between the time they're working on the story and the time that it actually comes out, can actually be anything from 3 to 6 months. So obviously you want to be getting in quite early. So you might be pitching 3 to 6 months ahead, say, look, this is coming up. And because they may already be working on something. So a natural health publication, for example, would probably be aware of this particular week and will be working on it in advance. So for example, I was interviewed for an article about veganism, and I'd kind of forgotten about it, and then about 4 months later it was like suddenly it was out, and a main article. So it depends on the outlet. If it's an online outlet like Yahoo Health or something like that, then you could be pitching 2-3 weeks in advance, for example. So it really does depend on the outlet as well.
Okay, I understand. I guess probably a smaller online channels, they're probably media channels, they probably have a shorter period.
Exactly.
Yes. Trying to get to something that's print media, especially.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it depends on the story, because if it's something where the journalist has got to do a bit of research, because they're not just going to run your media release or whatever, or if you pitch them something, then, they might want to go and interview somebody else about a particular topic. They might want to go and do their own research on it. So you want to give them a bit of time to prepare that. So what you might find is perhaps if you pitch to them, say 3 or 4 weeks before the the natural week was coming up. But then if you hadn't heard, you might follow up again in a couple of weeks to give them a little bit of a nudge. So you're giving them enough time, but you're not doing it too far ahead, and then they forget about it and it goes to the bottom of the pile. So you've just got to be aware of, those lead times. And same thing like for TV and radio as well. So, oftentimes they'll be booking certain guests ahead of time. But often I know with TV and radio, sometimes they might say, if you contact them too early, they might say, it sounds good, because they're often working, particularly daily ones, they're often just working on the coming week. They might say, contact me a bit nearer the time. But it doesn't hurt to contact them a little bit to begin with, and then if they say, contact me a little bit nearer the time, then you can follow up with them and say, hey, you said to contact you again, here I am, kind of thing. So it's just being aware of those lead times and finding that balance between not too early and not too late.
That was just another thought I just had. So what about following up? So I say, I send you an email every day for the next 2 weeks until you say yes to my story.
No, definitely don't do that. Don't do that.
But my question is like, what do you think about that? Is there something you recommend? Send your pitch, do the research, think about the relevancy for the time, and then maybe send it out and then follow up in a week. Or something like that?
So look, it is fine to follow up, and there are different ways of follow up. Sometimes you can just literally do a follow-up and say, just checking you got the email below and seeing if there's any interest. Sometimes what you can do is a little trick where you can actually follow up and add extra information. So so you might have sent your pitch, but then you might not have sent absolutely everything, because you want to keep your pitches quite short and sweet and succinct, because journalists don't have time to read long pitches. So then you might follow up and say, and by the way, I wanted to let you know about this bit of research, or perhaps some extra images that have become available. So that way you're following up, but you're kind of offering a bit of extra information. So you're giving them a little nudge, a little reminder, but you're also offering extra information. But look, it is worth following up. And I'll give you a very quick example. This company contacted me literally a year ago, last May, and pitched me for Forbes. And I said, it sounds kind of interesting. It sounds fine, great. What have you. And then I filed it away in I've got a little email folder, potential stories. And I forgot about it, to be perfectly honest. And then they actually contacted me again very recently. And I was like, these seem familiar. And then I looked, and they'd actually switched PR companies, this particular company. And I'm like, they would be really quite good. So I replied back to them. I said, look, thanks for following up. And they offered to send me some samples as well. It was a food company. And I said, thanks for following up. I said, actually, someone contacted me a year ago. I said, and I'd love to get an update on where you're at and what have you. So now we're in liaising, and I'm going to be putting together some questions, and I'm interested in running a story on them. So that is quite a classic example. Sometimes, journalists might think, that sounds interesting. But if it's not immediately pressing, then, often it will either go to the bottom of the inbox, or it will get filed away somewhere as a potential interest story. So I didn't hit the delete button. I thought, it sounds kind of interested, and I filed it, and then I just forgot about it. And sometimes that does happen. So, it took them a year to follow up, but you don't have to wait that long. But sometimes that can happen, and sometimes you might follow, even if they had followed up a month later or what have you, I might have still said, yes, I'm interested, I'll be in touch. But do you know what I mean? It had to get to a point where I'd sort of filed the stories that I want, and then I was kind of like, right, I'm going to go back to my little folder, and I'm going to make a list of some other articles that I might want to, stories that I might want to research. So I started going through this folder. I'm like, that company. I'll now reply to them. So you just never know. Sometimes it can be a few months or even a year before you actually get the PR, but better late than never. So basically the idea is you'll pitch something. If you haven't heard, if it's time sensitive. So if it's not time sensitive, okay, let me start again. If it's not time sensitive, particularly, so if it's kind of an evergreen sort of story, then you can maybe wait about a week or so, and then just touch base with them to follow up. If you don't get any response, then I would say probably leave it maybe another month, and then I would just give one more follow up. If you don't get any response at all, then you can probably assume that they're not interested. Sometimes what they might do is go, sounds interesting, I'll be in touch, kind of thing. And then again, it's fine for you to follow up. If it's very time sensitive, so say something's just happened in the media, I don't know, a celebrity's got divorced or something, and you can provide, say, comment on, how to avoid getting divorced, then it's fine to follow up within, say, a couple of days to say, look, since this is a time sensitive issue, just following up with you, kind of thing. So that's the way to sort of follow up, depending on whether it's an evergreen or a time sensitive story. But yeah, don't be afraid to follow up, but do it by email. Like it used to be, like back in the day, pre-email, people would ring you up and say, and sometimes, and don't do this, like if you send an email or a press release through, and then the very next day or later that day, you email and say, did you get the release, or did you get, or you pick up the phone and say, did you get the media release? Journalists get really annoyed with that. I mean, nowadays most of them don't answer their phone anyway, it will just go to voicemail. So yeah, but I mean, sometimes things don't arrive either. So again, that's another reason why it is okay to follow up. I've certainly, when I've pitched stories, when I was working full time as a freelancer, I would pitch stories sometimes to the ABC, and usually they would get back quite quickly and say, yeah, we like it, or no, we're going to pass on it. But sometimes if I didn't get a response, I would follow up and they go, oh, I didn't get your email. Yeah, this sounds great. So yeah, it's definitely worth following up, but just kind of don't be annoying about it.
Have some decency, I guess. It's just, it sounds a bit like a bit of common sense. And but I think, as you just said, don't be afraid of it. I think that's a big thing. I could imagine if you just start out with this kind of stuff, you may be a bit afraid, that should I follow up now? Is that actually okay? And I think don't be afraid, but just do it, with common sense.
Yeah, as long as you've come up with a really good pitch, you've done your research and you believe you've done the best you can to actually come up with a really good story, rather than just, desperately trying to get publicity for your brand, then I think that's fine. That's the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with it. But if it comes to a story, how spectacular does a story need to be?
It just has to be relevant to the audience. So that's where, you've got to look at what they're writing or what they're producing, if it's audio or TV. And then you can kind of go, you get a feel for what they're interested in and the types of stories they're interested in. And then it starts to become second nature to go, okay, this is the kind of story they like. What do they need? Oh, okay, this is very visual. They, what visual material have we got that we can back that up? What case studies? So, for example, with Wellnesspreneurs, for example, then have you got a case study of a client who might be willing to be in the media and be featured? So you've really got it. That's why it all comes down to the research, because the more you know an outlet and the types of things it wants, then you'll gauge the interest. Because obviously, look, it's very subjective. I mean, there are stories about the Kardashians, so I could care less about. To me, that's not important or relevant. But for a celebrity outlet, it's really relevant. So that's what I mean about researching the outlets, and then you'll really get a feel for, what's spectacular for one outlet is going to be very irrelevant to another. Do you see what I mean? So it's very subjective.
Very good. Very good. I love that. Great advice. So I usually, I asked, for, especially if I have experts like you on a certain topic, I ask them for free tips. And I think we just talked about, that you need to get free tips on getting free media, basically, or free coverage. Research the media outlet, or research where you want to be featured.
Yeah.
Then come up with a really good story and make sure the story fits, and pitch it at the right time. See if you get relevance. So can you give some? Can you elaborate a little bit on the actual pitch? I mean, like that actual email that I sent. Like, do you have a certain structure, or can you give us some tips on how?
Just keep it really short. So make sure your subject header is very clear of what it is. So don't get cryptic. Don't play on words. Basically, your subject header should almost be like a working headline. And again, you would find out the kinds of headlines that they generally would use. Be very, very clear exactly what it's about, so that the journalist will see straight away, is this of interest? And then it's very kind of short and sweet. You don't want to be sort of prattling on in your email, because they don't have the time to read one. So it can just be, hi. There's two ways to do it. Sometimes you can just kind of go straight into it. So you'll go straight into your pitch, and then at the end you can say, my name is so-and-so. I'm a health coach specialising in relationships, for example. and that's it. So it should literally just be a couple of paragraphs. So you keep it kind of really quite short and sweet. Or for example, if you're offering commentary, so something's happened, you might just say, hi, so-and-so. And then you would say, if it was in the news, I'm using the divorce thing as an example, so-and-so has recently got divorced. I'm a relationships coach, and I've got 3 really great tips for people to not be in that situation. Boom, 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 1, 2, 3, maybe a short little bullet point. Happy to elaborate on this, and here's my details, kind of thing. So it can be as short and sweet as that, depending on the pitch.
So you already put something into your pitch, what you actually want to be talking about. It's not just like a general. You get quite a bit specific as well. So if I have 3 tips, I put those 3 tips in.
If you've got 3 tips, yeah,
something like that.
Yeah,
but yeah. Very
it all depends on it is, or if it's perhaps if it's something or say a new report's come out in your industry, and again, if I'm using the relationships kind of report, so say something's come out, then what you can do is you can contact them and say, this new research has come out that says this, and then perhaps you disagree with it. So you might say, and actually I strongly disagree with this, because I found in my 20 years as a relationships counsellor, this is actually the case. And sometimes that can get you over the line because you're actually disagreeing with it. Or it could be that you say, and yes, I've actually found this as well, and happy to provide comment, for a journalist to write the story. Or journalists might have written a story on that. And that's what I mean about newsjacking. So if they've already written a story saying, shocking new report reveals, these statistics about divorce, what have you, then you can then respond to that. So, but you can also bring the news. So if you hear, obviously in your industry, I recommend you should be consuming media that, is around your industry, so you know what's going on, and then you'll be aware of these reports that come out, and then you can come to a journalist and say, hey, this report's come out. And then you can actually pitch them a story, and you're doing them a favor because they haven't had to hunt around for it. You've kind of literally presented them with this report and an expert, i.e. them, to comment on it.
Very, very good. Awesome. That's fabulous advice. I think that gives anyone who listens today a great chance to just try it out, do it in the right way without less annoying emails to journalists. Hopefully.
Yes.
That would be a great outcome, I'd say, for both parties who are involved there.
For sure, yes.
It's awesome to hear your passion about and getting word out about veganism, Katrina, and how you niche. That was really, really interesting, and I can't stress it enough how important that is. And I think you made a great move there. So really cool to hear about that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me here today. It was great having you. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's always nice to meet someone who's interested in the same things as you are. And I just, particularly for those wellnesspreneurs that are out there, particularly if you're, vegan or plant-based, then, I hope that you will get out into the media, because if you don't, someone else will, because the media are always looking for sources and experts to comment and quote. So why not you?
Exactly. And would you say that anyone has a chance? Like if they're doing good work to find a good outlet for them?
Well, basically, when you say anybody, obviously you need to know your stuff. If you've just had a career change and you're a newly qualified in your field, then you might want to be having to build up your client list, gain that credibility. But as long as you know what you're doing, you are an expert in your field. A lot of it is taking action. I have people on my program, and the ones who are successful, and I say this on my sales page, do not sign up for my program unless you're willing to take action and actually pitch the journalist. Yes, you can learn all the theory, which is great, but it's the ones that are actually like my woman who I told you about, who created the world's first plant-based freeze-dried ice cream. She only signed up about a week or so ago, straight on this. She used the platform, she typed out her pitch, she got on the call with me, I gave her a bit of coaching. That following night, she was in the US, because I have people from all over on the program. The following day, she sent the pitch out, and within a few hours, she had her first international media coverage, and then that led on to more media coverage. And she's delighted. She's just like, oh my God, I'm so happy. So you've got to take the action. And a lot of people will just go they get a bit nervous or afraid and what have you. And you've got to have that courage to get out there, because yes, there's social media, which is great. And they all work hand in hand, media, PR and social media. But I think it's already important to actually get out there in mainstream media and in the niche media, so that they start to see you everywhere, which is, I say, it's what's happened to me, and it can be what happens to you. I mean, people keep hearing your name and they associate you with something. That's what PR is. It's public relations and what people think of you and know you to be associated with. So yes, if you're good at what you do, you know what you're doing, yes, get yourself out there. Absolutely.
Awesome. That's encouraging words, and I think that's absolutely fabulous. And I know there are statistics, how you have to get your clients to have you 7 different touch points for 7.
I think it's probably more now. It used to be 7 a few years ago. Exactly. That's what I mean. People, they won't just necessarily see you once and think, right, yes, take my money. They do want to see you in all these different places. And I think particularly with the health sector as well, there's so many people coming into it that people are looking for credibility, and people who really can do what they say they can do, kind of thing. So the more that you can, getting in the media, and particularly mainstream media, it really gives you that credibility. It gives you that third party endorsement, because you can say on social media how great you are. And you can even have your clients, perhaps, testimonials are always good and what have you. But if you can get media coverage and be quoted as an expert, it just automatically, in people's heads, it's like, oh, well, they've been featured on Forbes, or they've been featured in the Sydney Morning Herald, or what have you. They must be good. It's this, you know what I mean? It's kind of that unconscious bias, rightly or wrongly. We do assume that. Even I do. I see people, I'm like, oh, okay, they must know what they're doing. They've been quoted in the media, kind of thing. So
absolutely. In your credit goes up instantly.
Absolutely. Like you'll see on the website, and when you get the media as well, you put it on your website as featured in, and then you put the logos of the media outlets, so that you're letting people know, so that when your customers and your clients come to you, they can go, oh, okay, you've been featured on here. She must be good, or it must be good. I'll make an appointment. So
big trust thing. Big trust thing.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we just went right into another couple of tips, and we could go on. We could go on here. So thanks again. I encourage everyone who wants to know how to do it, and maybe get on Katrina's course. Go into the podcast show notes. The links to veganbusinessmedia.com are in the show notes, as well as katrinafox.com, and her LinkedIn profile as well, so you can see if you find those 12 touch points to see what Katrina does. And I strongly encourage everyone to do so and check out what she has to offer on her website. I also like you to subscribe to the podcast so don't miss the next episode next week. And in the normal German manner, I say tschüss and see you next week. And also tschüss to you, Katrina.
Tschüss to you too. Thank you, Sebastian. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
If you would like to find out more about what Katrina does, head to www.veganbusinessmedia.com or www.katrinafox.com. The links for her website and social links are in the show notes, so check them out. Don't forget to subscribe to the Influential Wellnesspreneur podcast so you don't miss an episode, and get involved in our social community. We look forward to seeing you next week when we interview our next Influential Wellnesspreneur. Until then, have fun.